I want to talk about powers and principalities. So let me read a passage from St. Paul's epistle to the Ephesians, and this is in the last chapter in chapter 6. Finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. I won't go into that in terms of a Bible study, but you can hear there's just layers of a kind of shadowy figures and powers and presences that the Apostle Paul is talking about here. And this is something that can be misused, and I've heard it misused in circles that I've moved in. But it is a valid Christian point of view. In fact, it was a Jewish point of view. The first time we hear anything like this, as far as I know, you may have, might help me with this, but the prophet Daniel is praying for many days and fasting, and finally he has an angelic visitor, Michael the archangel, and he's told that he was prohibited from coming any sooner because the power of Persia, the prince of Persia, had withstood him. Now that's a weird kind of throwaway phrase, but as we begin to notice Jewish belief about the supernatural world, and then we come through the deuterocanonical or apocryphal era or the intertestamental period, all those are the same thing, and we get into the New Testament, we see that this has taken on more shape, that the idea that the powers of God and goodness, angelic powers, are in a struggle of some kind against powers of darkness that have different kinds of names. Some of them we hear a lot, like demonic powers, for example. But this idea of powers and principalities is what I want to focus on. The Apostle Paul also refers to something like this in the book of Colossians, where he talks about the elementary powers of this earth. It's a weird phrase. The Greek phrase is stoicheia, which you get all kind of interpretation on. But it's the idea of personalities, spiritual personalities, disembodied presences that are encoded in the systems of human government, human society, families. In the Old Testament, that's called a familiar spirit. Not like we say, I'm familiar with that concept. It's familiar in the sense of family. A family in the Old Testament seems to have a spiritual presence that follows it. And we get in the New Testament, we see that the powers and principalities are not necessarily evil powers. They're kind of neutral powers. And we are not sure how seriously we take them. Are they real conscious beings? Or are they kind of a spiritual language that describes what we now would call just systemic processes? And I am of the mind that it means something more than just what our sociologists and anthropologists would tell us, that it actually is a presence of some sort with a will that is either in alignment with God or not. And because of the fall of Adam and so forth, most of the powers and principalities are not in alignment with God. So this is a really important concept for us to get to, because as we begin to now look at artificial intelligence systems, we're realizing that something very powerful is beginning to emerge in our world. Self-driving cars, for example, is not just self-driving cars, but these cars are in communication one with the other. There's a system being built to where a lot of cars in a small area can quickly relay information one to the other. We have that with, say, the Waze program that many of us use, to get through traffic and so forth. Oh, too much traffic on the road. That's a red line. Going to go this other way because all the cars are talking to one another. Well, soon we won't need human beings to do that at all. Our cars will be talking to one another, but the cars also will be talking to other computer programs. All computer programs in the world will be talking to all computer programs. And now we know that we have intelligent programs that can actually read the internet, talk to us, and seem to be sentient or conscious. Now, I don't believe they are sentient and conscious, and I've talked about that earlier. But I don't think we're going to be able to resist thinking that they're sentient and conscious. And the reason I don't is because we feel that way about, say, our nations. Now, one of the factors about Christianity that is a problem to leaders in many nations is Christianity really presents the case that when a person is converted, in a real sense, they are no longer just American or French or Chinese, that they become a part of the kingdom of God and that their first loyalties are there. Obviously, they want to be good citizens in the nations in which they reside. But I'll speak for myself. I'm an American. I'm a proud American. I want my country to do well. I try to be a good citizen, but I'm not an American first. I'm a Christian first. I have been converted out of a power and principality. The United States is a power and principality. And I try my best to make sure it's a just and upright power and principality, though it is not always. And so when it disagrees with my Christian faith, I have to disagree with my nation to the point perhaps even civil disobedience. Many people paid a real price for this in different countries of the world where there are dictatorships and all. We haven't had to pay too much a price in our country because even the people in leadership in our country have in the past given lip service, at least, to Christian values. But that's less and less occurring. And some of the people that are most giving lip service to Christian values do not seem to care much for Christian ethics or Christian morals. So we're in a dilemma here that sometime our Christian faith begins to take on the cast of subservience to a power and principalities. You see that where you see the Christian flag flying, and the Christian flag is a made-up thing. In a few, I don't know how old it is, maybe 100 years old. But when you see it flying, it's always flying underneath the American flag. If there was such a thing as a Christian flag, it would not fly underneath the national flag in a Christian institution, because the values of the kingdom of God come first, then the nation. And this is true for Christians all the time in every situation they're in. If they're a banker, Christian ethic comes first. If they're a politician, Christian ethic comes first. And sometimes we suffer from that. Sometimes we cannot involve ourselves in some things that would be profitable to us personally because we have given our allegiance to another system. And the power and the principality that we reside in is at odds with that. Well, I think that's about as far as I can go right now with this. And again, I beg your indulgence. The last time in my last video, I went dark because I didn't know that I have to keep the screen on here on my laptop. I'm still learning how to do this, and I appreciate all the times in the churches I've worked where there were sound people and video people. They did all this stuff, and I didn't realize how complicated it was and how much they were blessing me with their talents, experience, and so forth. So bear with me, and we'll keep talking. Please send me your notes about this. What do you think about powers and principalities, and how do you think that a Christian walks through these in this way of being both loyal and faithful as much as possible to the systems in which they belong, and also sometimes being at variance with them because we belong to another kingdom? Thanks for listening.